How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Bill, and in today's video, finally doing something with the Bronco that I've been putting off for way too long, and it's something that is definitely needed, and that is upgrading the audio. I do have mid-package, so it's just the standard audio, the 6 speakers. You got 2 4-inch speakers in these pods, 2 4-inch speakers in the dash, and then 2 6.5s down in the kick panels underneath. I'm going to leave the 6.5 kick panels alone for right now. They provide decent mid-bass. It's not, you know, if you upgrade to a component speaker or anything, it's not going to make anything more clear down there, really, I don't think. Just because of the position, it's providing some mid-bass and it does its job. I've been going back and forth on exactly what I want to do. I was kind of settled on like these down-firing kicker subs just because it's pretty compact and it's down-firing. The box is, you know, very sturdy, so I could throw anything on top of that. I'll get into what I'm going to do with that here in a little bit. But it's very sturdy. I ended up going with the 10-inch, so it's a 10-inch active sub with a passive radiator, and it just kind of, so you can use a smaller box but sound like you have like a larger ported box. So it should give it more sound, a little bit better, deeper sound, especially for it being a 10-inch. I considered doing the 12-inch version of this, but the measurements were a little bit too big, and I was afraid, like, with the 12-inch would not be able to, it would block access to this, which I like to have the ability to still open that. You know, I do go off-roading. I will have some recovery gear in there. You know, if I ever need it, I have access to the jack and everything in there. So I didn't want to block that. I still want to have full access to everything. I still want to be able to, if I need to throw a tire in the back or anything in the back, you know, I want something that I could just throw right on top of that box and it wouldn't hurt anything. So that's why I ended up going with that. Over on Bronco 6G forum, somebody had mentioned that they went to plugandplaykits.com and got the wiring harness that just plugged in with this kicker key amp, and it was all plug and play. You just pretty much, you put this wiring in place inside the once you pull the audio control module access, you take one of the harnesses that's going into that, unplug it, plug it into here, and then plug this side in, and then it wires everything perfectly into that. So just with this connector, it already plugs straight in and wires everything, your speaker inputs into this amp, and then, you know, powers them and sends the signal out to your speakers. 4 channels, 50 watts per each channel, which is going to be more than enough. Like I said, it's going to power these 4 plus the, you know, the 4 channels are the 2 front and right and left, which is the 6.5 and the 4-inch in the front, and then the 2 rear, which is just the 4-inch. But then what I did, I got the extra harness coming off, which is coming back to this rear. It's going to convert into an RCA, which is going to go to this kicker 800 watt amp, which is more than enough that this box needs. I think the RMS for that box is 400. They have a 500 amp, which is what I was going to go with, but there's a national back order on those, and I didn't feel like waiting because I'm impatient. So we went with the 800. Always better to have more power and not need it than not have enough, I would say. And then just, you know, power wire to run, amped power to run to the battery, ground wires. Think we got everything that we need. And like I said, I just want kicker with everything. So I like the box, and the key amp is what I saw. You know, not an original idea. I got it off a forum, so credit to them. And I'll put a link to that forum post down in the comments. I also put a link down to plug and play kits. The guy's been awesome to work with. If you go to the site, there is a ton of options. Best bet is start a chat with them, get on a call, talk to them. Because a lot of stuff's on back order, some stuff's available, some stuff's not. So I wouldn't just go on the site and try placing an order. I would actually talk to them, see what's available, see if there's going to be any wait times on anything. He's a super awesome guy to work with. Not sponsored or anything. Like I said, I just saw a forum post and was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to buy that. So I've bought everything here, nothing sponsored. If you look at this picture, you'd think maybe he's sponsored by Kicker, but I'm not. It's just what I ended up going with. This, I'm going to try to mount up under the dashboard. This, I'm going to try to mount back behind here. Alright, so for these rear speakers, they're pretty easy to pop off. It's like a panel tool or anything that you can get kind of back in these cracks with. Once you get it started, it will just pop off of there. So, and then you'll have two screws. Like I said, these have been replaced already with these JBLs that I wasn't a huge fan of. And I'm going with the Kicker all around now, so I'm going to go ahead and replace these. But normally you would have your stock speaker, as that would be this, be in that position, and it would have a clip on the back end to take out. We'll retain the same screws, be reusing them. There weren't any wiring harness adapters available when I did this, so I wasn't too concerned about it. I just went ahead, cut the wires, and put these tips on here. Now these rear ones, there's two connectors. There's one right out here on the outside of the speaker, and that's if you're going to be removing these pods. You could disconnect that. It'll still have the connector here, like if you're going to hook up the sound bar or something else in its place. And then there's one inside that was connected to these two wires that had a clip on the end that plugged in here, which when we get to the front speakers, you'll see how those clips look. But I just went ahead, cut that harness off and put these on there, which should just slide right on the tabs on the Kicker. Now, one thing I had to do with the JBLs, and I'll probably have to do with these, which is why I brought these big snips out here, is you'll notice the OEM only has 2 holes, where these have 4 and that had 4. And if you line up those 2 holes there, then these are actually be in the way of putting the covers back on. So figure out which way I would put these in. It's going to be like that. So I need to cut off this one, which, so just use some snips or metal clips, and you could grind them off, but that's a little overkill. And these are actually serrated a little bit, so it's not cutting straight through solid metal. It's just little tabs to cut off of there. And then put these wires on there and install the speaker. So it's very simple process back here in the back. Alright, so just like that, the rear ones are replaced. Now the fronts are very similar. It's a little harder to get this cover started because these gaps are a lot tighter. So even this sharper thing might not get in there too good to get started. So even like I might have to go grab a credit card or something like that that'll get in there a little bit better, because so these are definitely much tighter. There we go. So that finally get it to pop up. You could get in there. it's just these clips here that are going in there. And then along this front side, there is a little lip that kind of gets tucked under there. That's what I was saying, when you're putting them back in, you kind of have to put this edge in first, make sure it gets put underneath the lip of your dash cover there. But once you get it started, it pops out. It's just getting it started without screwing anything up. So I think these are 7 or 8 millimeter. I think probably 7, maybe 8. Now I'm second guessing myself. Anyway, let me get a ratchet and pull that out. Alright, so that's what I was saying on the back. Originally they come with these clips. I believe you can find the adapters here, so you don't have to cut these clips off and you can retain them. However, I don't think I'm ever putting these OEM ones back in. Don't really care too much, so I'm just going to cut these wires off and splice on the tips that will fit on there. Then also, like the rear speakers, we're going to have to trim 2 of these tabs off so that it'll actually fit in there. The speakers actually come with these leads, so the clips that will clip right onto the speaker itself, and then some wire, and then it also provided some butt connectors. I use my own butt connectors, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just reuse this. It's going to give us way more wire than we need, but rather have too much. Ideally, I would have just put these connectors, we got enough wire that I could just put these connectors on the tips here and not had to worry about it, but I don't have any of these. So let's go ahead and splice those on. Get our speakers done up there. Alright, so got both of these installed. It makes a big difference in the audio quality. I think these 4-inch speakers, I think they were like 60 bucks for a pair. So 120 bucks would greatly improve the sound quality in your Bronco. It's not going to make it super loud or anything like that, but it definitely is much cleaner and clearer sounding. It's not so tinny, it's not so muddy sounding. It's better quality audio coming out of them. So that is, you know, if you're looking for a quick, easy upgrade. However, if you want more volume out of those same speakers, then we're going to have to install an amp. Now, the kicker key, it also comes with a microphone. So once you get it hooked up, you hook up a microphone to it, it listens to the audio and kind of tunes itself for you, so you don't have to do any tuning. Which is, for such a small and cheap amp, is very surprising that it has that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the quality of that is. But this is also going to be super easy with the wiring harness that's provided. So that's going to be the next thing that we do. So in order to do that, we need to get access to the audio control module, which I'll clean up in here a bit first and get some better light in here. It is actually right behind this panel. So we're going to have to pull that panel down. And in order to do that, we got to pull a couple of screws out. So Yeah, if you have a handle here, you'd have to take the handle off to get access. I don't know. Am I the only one that saw that point? The handle is absolutely pointless and didn't like it. I actually rather have ordered just the base model blank off plate there. I've had several people in my car, and not once have I ever seen anybody use that grab handle for anything other than to say, oh, that's kind of cool, or point it out or say anything about it. And when I was changing out all the colors for things, it's like, I don't care. I don't necessarily want an orange handle there. I don't want any handle there. It's just bulky and gets in the way and serves absolutely no purpose. So I just went with the base model, no handle plate that goes right there. And I like it much better. But maybe I'm the only one. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, so to take this all apart, first we're going to need to open our glove box. There is a 7mm bolt. There's actually 2 of them right there, but you only need to take out the one closest to the center. That's going to hold the upper corner. And here on the driver's side, you're going to have to open this, and this just clips and folds down. There's going to be another, or I said 8mm, I believe it's 7mm. 7mm bolt screw right here. Again, there's 2, but you only need to worry about the top one in this case, and that's holding this center console. But I'm going to actually go ahead and we'll stop doxing myself. But you see there's a clip right there and there. If you want to dump everything from your glove box out onto the floor. But I wanted to get access to back here because this is where I'm going to put the amp, somewhere up here, if at all possible. So I just take that down. So when we put it back in, this got to go in there and so on. But do those clips, then it just holds onto the rod right there, so you can pull your entire glove box out, get it out of your way. Ideally you would empty it first so you don't just dump everything on the ground. But yeah, so then hopefully somewhere in here we'll be able to find a place for that amp. But until then, let's go on the other side of the 7mm bolts. Now we got to pull this bottom piece out here, which clips in, and it's got a clip there. It's kind of, you got to pull it, you got to pull this top down first, but then pull the bottom straight out. The bottom comes straight out, but it's kind of, there we go. So then this should pull straight out. Now we got the bolts gone, and while this thing is going crazy and beeping to let me know that it's not in park, which I'm well aware of, just kind of grab this and pull it out. All right, now I can just set the thing up. And now on the back side, you got a connector for the auto start stop switch, which if you were installing the auto start stop eliminator like I have, it would just go in line there. Then there's another wiring harness, you just clip And then one more clip over on this side. And then this whole thing could come out as well. If you wanted to hook up an amp to this, this is all your speaker wires coming out right here. And so this right here is about how much room you have to work with if you want to try to splice into all those speaker wires to either run a second set of wiring to an amp and then run back, or if you wanted to try to tap in and run a line converter to like a DSP, or run a converter to RCA so you could plug that into an amp. That's about how much room you have. Instead of having to splice into a bunch of things, all you gotta do is get this awkward to get to plug out. Instead of having to go in there and try to splice wires and tap into wires, it's much easier if you just use this harness. So this has already got all the splicing and wiring and everything done. So it's going to take the signal wires that are coming out. This is going to plug back in. It's going to send those signal wires to the amp to get processed and amplified, then send them back, and then back into the speaker, out to the speakers. So that right there, clipping that on, and then plugging that in is so much easier. So for that, yeah, I would definitely pay money to the plug and play site. Like I said, the guy's pretty awesome. Makes it super easy. Just, I said, plug and play. Unplug that, plug it in here, plug this in here, and then this harness will go to the supplied harness that will connect directly to the amp. So the other side of this harness is just going to connect to this one. Then it's got connections for the amps. And then it's got the line output that's going to turn into RCAs for the sub. So, trying to see which would be the best way to run this wiring. So, I'm actually going to go ahead and undo these 4 bolts so I can move that module around a bit and make it easier to run that wiring harness in there. Got the harness tucked in there, got the other side pulled through here. So in theory, should be able to put this center console in. Make sure everything gets plugged back into it. And we have all this wiring that's going to get jammed or tucked back in there. We won't say jammed, we'll say tucked in there. And now we have these wires, which this should just connect straight to the amp. We got one side here, connects straight to the amp. And this side connects to the other side of the amp. So, in theory, this should work. The sub's not connected, but the other speakers should all be connected now and should power on. That definitely works. One thing that's super awesome about this is there's 2, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's 2 separate gains on here. The first gain is for amp 1, which is the front channel. And then amp 2 is for the rear channel. So I was actually able to give the rear a little bit of a bump on this, which brought up the sound of the rear speakers a bunch. So it actually, you can actually hear the rear speakers now, and it sounds like there's sound coming from back there, and it gives you a more full sound, where before I couldn't really tell the difference if I had speakers all facing forward or in the center, because I could never hear any sound coming from the back pretty much. But you know, this one I have a little bit less than 50%, and this one just slightly over 50%, and it kind of balanced that sound out. Now I do need to tune the sound. So there's a, what do you call, a microphone here that you plug in. Alright, so even though I just talked about being able to turn those two gains up, turns out I had to turn them back down for this test. I got the microphone there, supposed to have it facing straight up as possible. I wasn't able to do that without the assistance of some tape, because that wire would not let it sit flat pointing up, so I used some tape. And okay, I was looking all over the place for the button to start this, but it's actually right here on the microphone itself. There's a little button to push, so I gotta turn this up. Which means close the door. I don't know how well that noise is being picked up. Let's go through a series of tests. And if it's successful, it should play some happy music. If not, it said it'll play sad music. There we go. I guess that was the happy sound, or the happy music. Alright, now I can go ahead and mess with the gain settings and change them to wherever I want. Get them set, and we'll figure out where we could tuck this amp up. Before I tuck everything away, I'm going to crudely set up the amp in the back, just to make sure that's working, and then I'll get this all plugged in, closed up, and then we'll work on routing the wires to the back cleanly. So I just ran wires straight to the battery. I ran the RCA around the outside and hooked it up real quick to do a test, and everything sounds awesome. I mean, this thing puts out a lot more bass than I expected it to. So it's going to take some tweaking to get everything dialed in where it sounds good and not rattling or anything. Because yes, there was some rattling, but I think that might have been my underneath, because I have the air pump and stuff underneath for the train horn, and I think that's might have been like one of those things might. But anyway, so back here I've taken this piece of trim off. It just pops straight up if you ever need to take it out. Taking this trim off and all along there, just so we could see where we're going to put this amp and hide everything. Now this panel's not hard to get off, but it flexes a lot because of how big of a panel it is. So it makes me nervous that I'm going to pull something off, or, you know, bend or tweak something, trying to get these plugs off the back, these pins. So just kind of be careful and work my way through it. This. And we stick it there, then I don't think, pretty sure that's where the and so anywhere back behind here should work, because this doesn't go back that far. This goes back to right there. So I mean, this sticks out as far as the wheel well, and that goes back. So that could fit anywhere, or right there it could fit. I'm liking that spot right there. Or perhaps on this side, like so. It could fit back there like that, but let me tinker around, see if I can't find a better spot for that. Went ahead, started plugging everything in back up front. Got this all back together. The amp up here, it's not permanently, it's not fastened very tightly up here, but like right up underneath there, there's a crossbar, and it's just zip tied in place for right now. I want to make sure that there's no issues with it being there. If that's not a problem, I'll check it in a couple of days, make sure that there's nothing melting, no weirdness anywhere, like how, depending on how hot that gets, and then figure out a more permanent mounting solution for that. But then ran the wire down along here, back behind here, under all this, and then it's just coming out here and running to the back. And back here is where I'm going to call it quits for now. Now, I have an idea, but I don't have the materials that I need to get the amp mounted back there. So I'm just going to run the wires, put them out, put the amp like right here or somewhere. You know, it's going to be exposed for right now while I figure out how to build the little mount that I want to do for over here to get that amp tucked away. So I think that means I'm just going to go ahead and put everything back together. I'll leave the amp sitting out. I still got to run a power wire, but I'll have the, I have the RCA that'll be coming off this side. Yeah, I'll probably just run the ground there, run power up to the battery, and just call it good for now. And so I was thinking I was going to run the power wire outside and then bring it in, but I'm just going to go ahead and run it along like I did the RCA cable on that side. I'm going to run the power along this side, and I'm just going to go through. You can see there's a rubber grommet right there that I pull out, and man, running wires in this thing is probably one of the easiest cars. But I don't know if you could see, but it's just right there where that grommet is. So super easy to access. Just going to cut a slit in it so I can push this wire through. And the grommet even has little ears on it so you can pull it tight and get that through. So cut a little slit in to run this wire through and give me enough slack. And then I'm going to run it down underneath. Push a good length of that through. And should be able to just reach in, pull that through. That should give us more than enough to work with here. And push that plug in there. It's got those little tabs on it, so you can actually come to this side and cut this probably about here. Or I could do the fuse, put the fuse in, put that to the battery. So now that wire is tucked under there. It's got to run it back through there, which this just pops out. And this pops up. Run it back up there. Now the power wire is run up through here. Pulled this out. Yeah, I was curious if there's room on this side at all, but there's absolutely none. There's definitely much more room on the passenger side. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how I'm going to do the amp over here. I have some ideas, but it's going to take me longer today to figure that out. If this amp was a smidge smaller, it would make life much, much easier. Like I said, the 500 amp one would probably have been perfect. However, they're on back order. So we'll figure out something for this. But for now, I'm just going to snap all this back together. Put all these pieces back into place. Just looking at the seams that's underneath this plastic piece, and that paint and seams just flaking apart. That's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen on a new car, for sure. Okay, got everything pretty much put back together. I just don't have this piece in yet, but I got the ground connected back up under there. Got the power running through there, and then got the signal wire coming through there. And so I'm just gonna let those come up underneath, like so. Got the ground, got the power, got the RCA. And you notice you don't have a remote wire running to this, and this will activate with the signal on, so you don't need the remote wire. Some amps you need to run a remote wire, so when you turn the ignition on, it'll turn the amp on. This will turn on when it gets a signal, an audio signal, and it'll turn off if it stops getting a signal. So we're not running a remote wire unless we end up seeing any issues with that. I don't think there will be any, but in the case there is, we could always run a remote wire. Now, I definitely don't need all this ground wire. I can cut that as short as I need because, like I said, end goal is we're going to have the amp back there. So any amount of ground wire I cut, it's still going to be plenty left to run over to here. Power wire, I'm going to need to leave long. So I have plenty to run over there, and then the RCA I can't really cut either. I mean, I could trim, but I want to make sure we got enough to run back over to the amp as well. So those two, I'm not going to cut. I'll just be able to kind of tuck the excess wire back underneath this flap and underneath that trim piece. And as far as the amp itself and the box, I'm just gonna kind of leave them sitting there like that for right now. If you're wondering, this is a 4 gauge for the power and ground that I'm using, which should be more than plenty for the size amp we're running. Seems to be close to what they had in mind for this amp, because that wire fits perfectly in there. Alright, and then speaker wires, then just running mono the sub, so just one positive, one negative run. We got our adapter here, need to plug that in, and the RCA's, we got the input here, and we tuck some of our excess wire. So yeah, not exactly pretty right now with the amp and the wires, everything exposed, but it's going to do for now. I figured out a mounting solution for the amp back there, which will clean it up, and then once I get the amp out of the way, I want to build around this box a bit to kind of build it in and make it all kind of a more seamless looking thing where it doesn't look like a box sitting there. But so I know this camera and this video are not going to do any justice to how good that actually sounds. This all needs to be cleaned up a little bit better. As far as sound itself goes though, I could not be happier. Install that plug and play kit. Install with the plug and play kits. Plugandplaykits.com wiring harness. Super simple. If you're just doing the 4-way amp, I mean, that's all you need is that wiring harness and that amp, and just plug it in. It will repower all your existing speakers. I imagine it would work with the B&O system as well. Not 100% sure, but if you have a bass system, I highly recommend checking them out, saving you the hassle of having to tap into all those wires and wire everything up. Because I had looked at that a few times and considered it and thought about it and looked at what I wanted to do, and I really just did not want to do it. It was like I needed to do it because it's, you know, the sound needs the upgrade so badly, and I did not feel like messing with all that. So I saw that and I was like, yes, absolutely. And then, like I said, I wanted to run the sub. I ran the 10-inch sub. Like I said, it's the 10-inch kicker with the passive radiator. And the reason I went with the 10-inch is so when it's there, this still opens up no problem. The 12-inch you still would have been able to open it up, but maybe probably about that much. And so I wanted to leave a little bit of extra wiggle room there because I want to kind of build around that box and build that in so it's a more permanent fixture in there and just not something laying back there to get in the way. And then, of course, we got the amp, which we'll figure out how to get that tucked away and looking better than it does. But, man, it sounds freaking awesome. I'm so happy I finally got around to doing this. Like I said, I know this video is not going to do anything for showing exactly how good it sounds, but it sounds a million times better than it did. So I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can upgrade the audio easily in your Bronco. There's more to come as far as figuring out where that amp's going to go. But for now, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.